a moment to thank our generous sponsors. We have three very generous sponsors, and I'd like to acknowledge them now. You know, the Chamber does a whole bunch of things, but we don't do anything without the support and help and all the great things that the business community does. That is the wind beneath our wings and allows us to do our work. And so today's sponsors are, our presenting sponsor is Booz Allen Hamilton, and you'll hear from someone shortly from Booz Allen. Our webinar sponsor is Port San Antonio. Thank you, Port San Antonio. And our patron sponsor is the Southwest Research Institute, headed by, of course, our chairman of the board, Adam Hamilton. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your support. Again, the support of business is what allows us to do our work, and so we're so very pleased that you all have joined us for this very successful Women in the Military event, so thank you. I'd also like to thank my staff, of course, for helping put this thing together, particularly Lori Stinson, my Director of Military Affairs and Leadership Development. Lori, great work. I'm really excited about today. All right, let's begin. So, ladies and gentlemen, back in 1948, President Truman signed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, which allowed women to serve in our armed forces. In 2017, during Texas's 85th legislative session, State Representative Victoria Niave filed and passed House Bill 2698, which designated June 12th of each year as Women Veterans Day, a day to recognize and honor women veterans throughout the state of Texas. On the heels of this past Friday's June 12th Women Veterans Day commemoration, we are honored to bring to you an esteemed panel of trailblazing military leaders. As I prepared for this morning's event, I learned from the Institute of Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University that female veterans comprise 10% of the overall veteran population. But what was surprising to me was that when leaving the uniform behind, women typically don't self-identify as veterans. We are here today to shine a light on women in the military and to find out how best to support them while wearing the uniform and when they complete their service and they are no longer wearing their uniform. From peacetime to war, women serve valiantly and lead troops selflessly while also striving for success in their personal and professional lives. Military City USA is home to hundreds of women veterans, and many of our great business organizations are proud to employ women veterans from across a wide variety of industries and positions. Now, I'd like to introduce a representative of our presenting sponsor, and I'd like to introduce our friend and a personal friend who's visited San Antonio, Mara Motherway. Mara serves as Vice President and Head of Government Relations at Booz Allen Hamilton, as I said, our presenting sponsor. Both of Mara's parents served as Marines, so she comes from a big family with service at its roots. She is a recognized public policy expert and a retired U.S. naval officer with more than 21 years of experience. Starting in 2016, she built Booz Allen Hamilton's government relations capability from the ground up in less than 18 months, formalizing the function for the first time in the firm's 105-year history. She has 25 years of government and private sector experience in strategic intelligence, acquisition, congressional affairs, organizational design, and business development. She is a board member for Naval Intelligence Professionals and Blue Star Families, and also serves on the AFCEA Intelligence Council. In 2018, The Hill, a DC-based magazine, selected Mara as one of Washington's top lobbyists for a Fortune 500 company. Mara, thank you. It's great to see you. The floor is yours.
This morning, I just want to keep my remarks really brief so that we can have a conversation around the changing nature of women in the military and the role that we've had and the value that everybody brings. And I thought I would share some of the advantages that I had in my military career through the very diverse nature of the roles that I had, but also the mentoring. And then really just briefly touch a little bit about balance. And I will share with you, it was mentioned that I am the child of two Marines. And when I entered the Naval Academy in the summer of 1988, there were less than 10% women. Today, there are 35% of women midshipmen. So I think it's just been a tremendous change over that period of time, and I am so grateful for all of the hard work that folks did over the years to try to create those opportunities. But what I will share with you is a really interesting conversation in light of current events, and a conversation that I had with several retired four-stars just last week around the notion of what has changed and what is different and why it's different. And that comes down to accountability. So for me, I had this tremendous opportunity to serve. I had excellent mentors. Two of my closest mentors were men who rose up to the grade of 3-star admiral, and one was a woman who rose up to the grade of 2-star admiral. And the reason why they became mentors of mine is that they were on various points in their journey of their career at my very first duty station in Hawaii. But I mention that because what was happening above me at that moment in history in the late 90s was a conversation around accountability. And it was very, very senior, all male military leaders in the Navy who were driving accountability for diversity down through the ranks. And it wasn't just around accountability for diversity through the ranks, it was accountability on ensuring that career paths and women were placed in appropriate career paths to give them the opportunity to succeed at the most senior ranks. And so in that regard, I was given this opportunity to navigate through the Navy and take on roles that women had never had before, from being the first female targeteer in the Navy to running current intelligence operations for the Navy. And it was tremendous, and it was because of those mentors. It was also because of a diverse group of women that enriched those experiences. Women that I met at the Naval Academy who came from all walks of life, and then women that I met throughout my career in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the Army, and in the Marine Corps. And it was just fantastic. And now, as I reflect upon where I am today at Booz Allen, how that applies towards my thinking around purpose and mission. Booz Allen is extraordinarily mission-oriented. We work in all different environments, supporting every single federal agency. We're in 40 states, and it's really just incredible how we are mission-focused. But that helps me, and my military career helps me think about that mission focus and really stay tied to it. And a lot of that comes from my time in the military, breaking down barriers and working collaboratively with a diverse set of individuals. And so when I think about these types of events, and I'm so grateful to the San Diego Chamber for hosting these, I think about what it means to be inclusive for women veterans, what it means for diverse women veterans, but also what it means when you transition into the corporate environment, how we need to stay connected closely across corporate America, those of us who are women veterans, who have the opportunity to be in leadership roles, and how we need to stay connected into the military. And so one way that we're going to stay connected from the Booz Allen perspective is by sponsoring the Women's Memorial Registry. And I will tell you, this is just a request to all the women veterans who are in the audience. Please register. My mom served when it was the Lady Marines, and I remember when the Women's Memorial was open, first open, and I took her there to hand register, and she was so excited as a woman who served in the Marine Corps in the 50s. And it still stands today, but it needs our help. And so what Booz Allen is doing right now, and we're very excited to do it, is to connect to the Women's Memorial Foundation in Washington, D.C., and this Women's Memorial, they're the congressionally appointed caretakers for the Military Women's Memorial. It's right at the gates of Arlington National Cemetery. And they keep our nation's official registry. And what the goal is to record every woman who served in America since the Revolutionary War, all 3 million of them. So over 268,000 veterans have registered to date, and you have the opportunity to, and I think that the link just went out. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the panel and hearing from these great women.
Thank you, Mara. Appreciate your words and appreciate your continued focus on all things that are important, particularly to women veterans and employing them, of course. Once they finish with their service, as you well know, life continues, and you all have been a big proponent to bringing women into the workforce and supporting military service members and their spouses and their families. So thank you to you and to Booz Allen for that continued leadership and that focus. Now I'm going to start, and I'm going to introduce our 3 panelists. So I'll introduce all 3 of them, and then we'll give each of them an opportunity to say a few words, and then we'll go into the question and answer. And by the way, You can submit questions anytime. All the questions that we have come directly from you all, and so we'd love to hear your thoughts on questions, and then I'm happy to answer them. All right, so now we're going to introduce our esteemed panel of military leaders, and I'll start with Lieutenant General Laura Richardson, Commander, United States Army North, and Senior Commander, Fort Sam Houston and Camp Bullis. We're also joined by Major General Jeannie Lovett, former Commander, Air Force Recruiting Service, and newly assigned Director of Operations and Communications, Air Education and Training Command, and Captain Elizabeth Liz Montcalm-Smith, Acting Deputy Commander, Naval Medical Forces Support Command. These women have paved a path for future women leaders. They inspire, they encourage, and empower our young women who are rising up in the ranks and choose military service as a career. And now I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, our good friend and military partner, Lieutenant General Laura Richardson, Commander, United States Army North, which is also 5th Army, and Senior Commander, Fort Sam Houston and Camp Bullis. General Richardson boasts many firsts: the Army's first female combat arms general officer, the first female deputy commanding general for the 1st Cavalry Division, and the first woman to command the Army's U.S. Army Forces Command and U.S. Army North. She's a skilled aviator, an Army aviator, and is married to Lieutenant General Jim Richardson, a fellow Army officer. They are the only married 3-star generals in the Army that we're aware of, and if our facts are still current, she was one of only 4 female 3-star generals in the entire U.S. Army. She is a proud mom of an adult daughter and grandmother to a beautiful granddaughter. We are excited to have you with us. General Richardson, thank you. I've heard you speak before at the Leadership San Antonio graduation ceremony about a year ago or so, so I'm excited that you're here. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's so good to be here, and it's good to see you on the screen. And but good morning, Richard, Lori Stinson, and the Chamber, and everybody on the net. What a great opportunity and a great day to do this. But really appreciate you hosting this event about women in the military. And it's one of the very few events that have not been canceled due to COVID. So I'm glad that we've figured out this how to do this and connect on the web and make things happen, because things have to continue to go. And so I really appreciate that this was kept on the schedule. And I want to thank the other panelists too. It's really my pleasure, my honor to be part of the panel and all of the service. I didn't add up the number of years of service of all 3 of us, but I venture to say that it's probably quite a bit. So to my fellow panelists, good morning as well. Our military services have come such a long way in the equality in our ranks. The most recent for the Army being the opening of the final combat positions opening to women in 2016, and then also our new physical fitness test called the Army Combat Fitness Test, the ACFT, which is a gender and age neutral physical fitness test. But bottom line, all you need to do is meet the standard for those critical skill sets or positions, and then also our PT test in order to excel. So again, neutral to gender and age. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself, because I think just the personal story and what we've gone through really kind of set the stage for where we are today, and all of us. And so, but just to tell you a little bit about my 33-year journey in the Army, I was the oldest of 4 kids. My father was an athlete, and so all of us kids were athletes too. My parents never put typical gender norms on us, just told us that we could do anything. And I think that was really important, the encouragement and those sorts of things. And Title IX was very, very important to me as an athlete and growing up. It allowed and opened opportunities in our schools when I was young in order to compete in sports. And so I think that was a very important event as well that took place. I grew up swimming competitively from age 5 to 21. We learned a lot about discipline, teamwork, and leadership being on the swim team. And those values carried over into my Army profession, obviously, and have served me very well over the years. Swimming practices were 2-a-day practices and also included weightlifting and running. I became a Colorado State champion in a few swimming events and also achieved All-American status. And then when I went into, took ROTC in college and was able to get accepted to flight school, I was more fit than most of the male lieutenants. And so physical fitness has been an important part of my lifestyle, and obviously has paired nicely with the Army. At 16 years old, I earned my private pilot's license in a single-engine plane, and this was hours of learning and training in small airplanes. And it really opened the doors for me once in the Army. And of course, I requested to serve in our Army Aviation branch, which was a really tough branch to be selected for. But I think just the training that I already had made that a simple decision for the Army. I took ROTC in college and also was on scholarship for swimming. I know that the Air Force folks will get a kick out of this. I started out in Air Force ROTC and then switched over to Army ROTC after the first year. I was lucky to receive a commission into Army Aviation upon graduation. I met my husband early on in my career as a lieutenant. We've been married for 33 years. We're both still active duty, and my husband, Jim Richardson, is also a 3-star general and is the Deputy Commander for the Army Futures Command in Austin, Texas, just right up the road. We have one daughter, and as Richard said, also a 3-year-old granddaughter. Jim, who was a couple years ahead of me in the Army, was a huge help to me during my formative years as a lieutenant and a captain. He coached and mentored me in what it was to be a good leader, and he was a great example of a good, strong, disciplined leader, and so I worked to emulate his example. We worked hard, but we also worked hard to find that balance as a dual military couple, to be able to serve our nation and also take care of our family. Otherwise, only one of us could continue to serve. I've had an amazing career in the Army and some great jobs, positions that I had no idea even existed in the Army or in the military, from being a helicopter pilot to leading troops in combat during the Iraq invasion, as a battalion commander in the 101st Airborne Division, working as the Vice President's military aide and carrying the nuclear football, being the first woman to be the Deputy Commanding General for an armored division right up the road in Fort Hood, Texas, working on Capitol Hill as the Army's legislative liaison, and also as the acting U.S. Forces Command Commander. And now, here in Military City, USA, as the Army North Commander, and just having commanded 9,000 personnel across the nation in the COVID-19 response. Just what an honor it is to serve our nation at this time. I'd like to point out that there were no women in positions above me where I served. My mentors have all been men, and I would say that all leaders are responsible for developing their subordinates regardless of their gender. And that is what makes people successful, and really that is the secret sauce, I think, to making sure that we have equality within our ranks. Opening of all remaining positions, including those combat positions that I mentioned earlier in 2016 in the military, really created the opportunities for women, I feel. It finally opened the doors for those last 3 positions, infantry positions, armor positions, and also field artillery, certain positions in the field artillery. And I think that opportunity now opens it up to where women have the opportunity now to compete to be our Chief of Staff of the Army, to be our Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And so really it's all about the opportunities, and I think that the military has done a pretty good job of doing that. But that's what I had for you today for an opening, and I really look forward to the questions and the discussion. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, General Richardson. Laura, great story. I love hearing it. I love the swimming and just, working hard to get where you're at. So congratulations to you. And we'll ask you some questions in a little bit, and I'll introduce your colleagues next.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
All right, our next panelist is Major General Jeannie Levitt, the Director of Operations and Communications at Headquarters Air Education and Training Command. Before I begin, I would like to express our sincere congratulations on a job well done, having just last week relinquished command of the Air Force Recruiting Service. We're excited that you haven't moved too far and you're still in San Antonio serving at Joint Base San Antonio Randolph. Congratulations on that. Major General Levitt boasts many personal and professional achievements. She is the Air Force's first female fighter pilot as a first lieutenant back in 1993, with more than 3,000 flight hours, including more than 300 combat hours over Iraq and Afghanistan. She is the first woman to command the 57th Wing at Nellis Air Force Base and the first female commander of the Air Force Recruiting Service. A fun fact, General Levitt helped advise the creators of the superhero movie Captain Marvel so that filmmakers could accurately portray what it is like for a woman to serve in the Air Force. General Levitt, we are so honored that you're here with us and look forward to your words. I know that you've got a short video before you begin your presentation, so why don't we roll the video and then you can start your presentation immediately after. Thanks again.
Lieutenant, I'm sure you're a Sierra Hotel pilot and looking forward to the F-15.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you cannot do in comparison with your male counterparts? Do you have the stamina to compete one-on-one, do you think?
Yes, sir. I go through the same training that my male counterparts go through, and I've had no problems to this point, and I'm looking forward to the challenge of flying the F-15E.
Lieutenant, what is it?
When I started pilot training in 1992, the Air Force, indeed the world, was different. And trust me, so were the popular
I
hairstyles.
decided I definitely wanted to fly fighters, so when it became
I didn't set out to break barriers, but I've had a lot of opportunities in my career to do just that. From being the Air Force's first female fighter pilot to the first woman to command a combat fighter wing,
As members of the 57th Wing, we all have the chance to be part of something bigger than ourselves. I challenge you to take advantage of this opportunity.
and though I didn't used to like the term trailblazer, if it means that those who follow the same path meet less resistance, then I guess I'm okay with that title. The Air Force is different now, and so is my hair. But throughout the years, one thing has stayed the same: my philosophy.
Gender, race, religion, none of that matters. What matters is how you perform.
And that's how I got here. It's the message we pass on to new airmen. It's the spirit of our great Air Force, and I couldn't be more proud to be a part of it. Aim high, airmen.
Okay, well, Richard, thank you for that introduction. And Lori, thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here with some very impressive ladies as we spend a little time with you. I am also married. My husband is retired Air Force. He was a colonel and an F-15 pilot. We have two amazing children. Our daughter is 15 and our son is 13, and they keep us really busy. I had a very different experience growing up than General Richardson, in that I never even flew in an airplane until I was 18 years old. As a passenger, never had the opportunity. I was the third of four girls, grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and our parents told us we could do anything we wanted. We just had to work hard. I had no plans to join the military. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to study engineering because I liked math and science. And so I went to the University of Texas, right up the road in Austin, and I was studying aerospace engineering. To get some work experience and a little bit of money, I was doing a co-op work exchange program, and I was working at NASA Johnson Space Center when I ran across a young man who was a second lieutenant awaiting pilot training for the Air Force. And that's when I learned about being in the Air Force and being a pilot, and I asked him about a million questions. When I went back to school that following semester, I just randomly showed up in the ROTC detachment spring of my sophomore year and said, I want to be a pilot. And that was how it all started. I have had so many opportunities because I joined. I just wanted to fly airplanes. And one of the things that people have asked, well, why do you continue to serve? Well, I continue to serve because I love the mission and I love the people I get to work with. Like General Richardson, I did not have women role models. I did not have women that I could go talk to in general. But there were men who were very interested in providing guidance. What I found is that if you find people who are willing to work hard and try and really want to do their best, mentors will find you and they will help you and guide you. As mentioned, I just gave up command of Air Force Recruiting Service. So I spent 2 years as the commander of AFRS. And the mission statement there is to inspire, engage, and recruit the next generation of airmen and space professionals. We recently changed the motto when we stood up the Space Force in December of 2019. One of the interesting things we found was through market research and studies, there is a pretty significant lack of understanding of the military. People know of us, but they don't really know us. When I say that, if they see you in uniform, they thank you for your service. And I appreciate their support, but they tend to not realize that we're just like them. You know, we're moms, we're wives, we're part of the community, and we have normal lives just like them. We just choose to serve our country. One of the things that we've really worked on is trying to increase the number of pilots that are female or minority, because what we want is we want a diverse force. Our leadership recognizes that diversity is a strategic imperative. And so while we're fairly diverse in the enlisted ranks, less so in the officer ranks, and definitely less so in the rated or pilot type of career field. So we made a significant push to try to increase the number of women and minorities who are attracted to being pilots. And one of the things that is so important is seeing someone that looks like you. And so seeing another female, seeing another minority, whatever the case may be. What we found is there's certain barriers, in particular when it comes to women. And one of those barriers, for example, was height. There was a perception that if you were below 5'4", you could not be a pilot in the Air Force. And that is not the case. We're going on a big campaign to do Mythbusters to let people know that no, there are opportunities to fly. You know, you may be restricted from certain cockpits. They do a number of measurements, but the fact is you can be a pilot. I know a lot of pilots who are below 5'4", both male and female. And so we made a very concerted effort. And one of the things you saw at the end of the clip, there was a whole bunch of women out on a flight line. We did that specifically in conjunction with the release of Captain Marvel. And so it was a commercial called Origin Story. If you get a chance, you can Google it. It was a pretty cool commercial. We got about 90 Air Force aviators out on the ramp at Edwards Air Force Base and filmed that commercial. And one of the really neat things was it was for the sake of doing the commercial, but it turned into an awesome networking opportunity and professional development. We ended up sitting down and having conversations, and everyone had a great time, and we've been trying to replicate that since. And so we've had a few other events to do just that, because we recognize the importance of being able to talk with other women and have those, peer type of connections. So all of that to say, there were not a lot of women flying. Well, there were none flying fighters when I first came in. There's more now, and we're making progress. And I'm just very happy to be here and spend a little time with you today. And thank you for inviting me.
General Levitt, thank you. A fantastic story. Of course, two very different ways that you all have arrived to where you're at, but just as equally inspiring and exciting to learn and to hear. So thank you. We're so pleased that you're staying in San Antonio as well. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So our final panelist is Captain Elizabeth Montcalm-Smith, Acting Deputy Commander at Naval Medical Forces Support Command. Since 1991, Captain Montcalm-Smith has dedicated her Navy career to performing basic research and medical technology. She has spent years focusing on innovation and science to support the health and readiness of the warfighter. She led and pioneered anti-venom research initiatives, which resulted in 2 provisional patent applications. This important work has created a universal antidote for the treatment of snakebite venom that could clearly translate to treatment products equally beneficial in the civilian community. She is married and has one daughter who is a petroleum engineering major at Louisiana State University. She is also in the home stretch of her career and will officially retire this December. Captain Montcalm-Smith is actually in the building with me. Of course, we're socially distanced, and I had a chance to chat with her a little bit, and she's a big horse fan, owns a couple of horses, and was telling me about her horses, and it was neat to learn about them. But Captain Montcalm-Smith, thank you for joining us. We're excited that you're here. I turn over the microphone to you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Perez. Lieutenant General Richardson, Major General Levitt, good morning. I am so honored to be a part of a panel with you two and walk among giants. And good morning, Lori. I haven't seen you in a long time, but it's good to hear your voice. As Mr. Perez stated, I have had a very different career from the generals. I am in the medical department, and as such, I am not a warfighter. And the medical department has actually been very kind to women, both as nurses and as physicians and in ancillary care. My way into the Navy was sort of odd. I went to graduate school, the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, and while there I married a medical student who subsequently graduated and became a physician. So when I was graduating from school, he said, oh, we need to be together, so you need to join the Navy so that we can move together. And I said, sure. And I joined the Navy. And then because there's only about 14 research physiologists in the Navy, I didn't have a lot of choices of where I could go. I could not go overseas. There were no jobs overseas. So he said, oh, you need to get out of the Navy and you need to have kids. We should have 6 kids. And I said, that's not really going to work for me. So sadly, that first marriage ended. But I subsequently met and married another naval officer. He was Civil Engineer Corps. He had gone to the Naval Academy. But when we had our daughter, Katie, we decided it was too tough with 2 in. And so he decided that he wanted to get out of the Navy. He was done. So he got out and I stayed in. It was the right choice for us and for our daughter, who I'm so proud of, petroleum engineer, major at Louisiana State. She also is a swimmer. She's a backstroker. And we are, one of the questions that Mr. Perez asked us to think about is, would you suggest to other people, other women, to join the service? And we are currently helping my daughter try and join, hopefully, the Air Force to become a pilot. So we look forward to that journey with her. It is a complicated road. I was fortunate in that I, in graduate school, had a very good female mentor. In fact, she had a hyphenated name, and when I got married, that's why I hyphenated my name. And we used to joke and say that we did enough work for 4 people, and that's why we had 4 names. But when I joined the Navy, there was really no female to help mentor me. And I did have male mentors, but sometimes they just didn't understand. It was only until it's probably about 5 years ago that I did find a female that was a willing mentor and was actually very helpful to me later in my career. The Navy, I think, does a good job with women, and several years ago we opened up one of the last frontiers that had been denied to women, and that was the submarine force. And so I do watch the news of the submarine force and look to see what the women are doing there. We do not yet have any women who have risen to the rank to be an XO or a CO of a sub, but it is coming. There are other countries that have had female commanding officers of the subs. And so I do think it is just a matter of a few years until we get someone who will be the first female commanding officer of a submarine. As Mr. Perez mentioned, I'm very proud that I was allowed to adopt a retired caisson horse Preston. And so Preston now is retired and lives out in Marion and spends his days eating grass, and sometimes my husband will ride him and walk him around the farm, pretending that he has a head of cattle that he is watching over. So thank you all for inviting me to participate today, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Captain Malcolm-Smith. Thrilled to hear your story. Again, another very different path, but a path to success nonetheless. So thank you all. All right, so let's move on to the question and answer period. We've gotten a lot of questions on the question and answer submission. So please remind everyone, if you have any questions, please submit them. And so why don't we start with the order that we began in, with General Richardson, General Leavitt, and then Captain Malcolm-Smith, and then we'll kind of change it up as the questions come. So the first question that I have is, do you regret any of the sacrifices you have made while serving in the military in terms of family, friends, community? General Richardson?
So I would say no to that question, and my husband and I tried very hard to make sure that in and amongst all the chaos with the military and moving every 2 to 3 years and overseas tours and then the war on terror that we've, with many deployments and things like that, that we were able to balance things. And if things got a little too out of balance, then one of us, it was always kind of the way of then one of us would need to get out. We were very lucky during on the Iraqi invasion. My daughter was in 8th grade at the time, and she went to live with my folks. She actually attended my high school that I went to. And there were 4 of us kids, as I mentioned before. My brother was 9 years younger than me, and so by the time Lauren started high school, he had just graduated a couple years before that. So my maiden name is Strickland, and so the Strickland name continued to live on. And anyway, so that actually worked out really well. But I would just say we just kind of had that pact, and we worked very hard to keep our family together. There were some things that command positions that my husband deferred because he was a little bit ahead of me to keep our family together. I did the same thing, and so we worked very hard to not ask for things that were very, that would obviously split us apart, because there are some very cool things that you can do in the military. I consider that I've gotten to do quite a few of them, but there are also some even neater opportunities. But that tends to specialize you so much so that if you're a dual military couple, you probably wouldn't be able to be stationed together. So we tried very hard not to select those kinds of things or ask for those kinds of things in order to keep our family together.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. General Leavitt?
Thank you. I would also say I do not have any regrets. We have children who have seen so many things and had so many opportunities. We've always talked about new assignments or new changes in terms of a family context. So we always have a family meeting and discuss what's going to change or what decisions we're facing, and we make it a family decision. So our children know that if they were ever tired of moving, I would retire. They won't even let me start that conversation. They do not know they're not in the Air Force. It's all they've known, because my husband and I have been in the Air Force since before they were born. And we weren't always stationed together, but it wasn't the Air Force's fault. We had very incompatible career fields. My husband was an F-16 pilot. I'm an F-15E pilot. The only place they're co-located is Mountain Home Air Force Base. Back in the composite wing days, that's where we met. And it's now all F-15Es. And so when we had command opportunities, and sometimes we were together in our assignments, and sometimes we were within a few-hour drive. The Air Force was great about working with us and doing the best they could. And we were co-located whenever we could be. For one of the assignments, my husband was in Korea for a year. but we've turned it into an adventure. So I would meet him with the kids anywhere that we could. So we met in Las Vegas, we met in Fairbanks, Alaska, we met in Hawaii, and I took the children to Korea for Christmas, New Year's. And so they have these cool adventures and opportunities that a lot of children don't. That year, our daughter was 6. She was finishing up first grade, and she had to write about some cool facts. And one of her cool facts was that she had been to 4 countries in 25 states at age 6. And so it's been an adventure for us. It's not easy. It is definitely, you have challenges, but it's kind of like how you approach it. It could be a challenge and a bad thing or an opportunity. So we always tried to move down the opportunity path, and it's been a great experience for our family. So no regrets.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. What a great story about your little one being able to write that report. That's really fantastic. We'll move on to Captain Montcalm Smith, please.
So, like the others, I do not have any regrets about any of the sacrifices that I have made or that my family has made. I would like to suggest that when you reach a certain level in any company, be it the DOD or the post office or Booz Allen, et cetera, you are going to have to move and you are going to have to take assignments that perhaps you didn't consider at first. But I don't think the DOD is that much worse than any other big company that will need to move you so that you can perform at your ultimate level. I did have to do a geographical bachelor tour for my commanding officer tour. I came down to San Antonio. The family was initially on board. Everyone rogered up. My daughter came down, excuse me, she actually spent 3 days at the Alamo Heights High School and hated it. And I said, it's only 3 days, let's give it some time. And she really was just not having any of it. And so as a family, we shifted, and my husband and daughter went back to Bethesda, Maryland, so she could finish her junior and senior year in high school, and I stayed in San Antonio by myself. It was the right decision for her. She continued to flourish in her high school academic and swimming career, and so my family has no regrets. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So another question, and we'll start with General Levitt. How were you in the beginning of your career as comparison to how you are now? And do you have any advice for any incoming females joining the service?
Well, I don't know that I'm that different. I was pretty determined, and I'm still pretty determined. I like to call it happy persistence. It tends to work well when you're trying to work things. Bringing that positive attitude with your energy and your determination really helps. And so that's something that I've pretty much stayed with throughout. In terms of other young ladies, I have had the opportunity to talk with several young ladies who have been interested in joining, and I'm very interested in talking to Captain Montcalm Smith's daughter, so we'll connect after this. But a number of them are either at officer training school and ROTC and pilot training. One of the big things is to work hard. I did not want to be the first female fighter pilot. I wanted to be the best fighter pilot. I didn't want to be differentiated by timing and gender. I just wanted to do my absolute best. And so advice I would give is, again, just absolutely work your hardest, put your heart and soul into it, and then find people to connect with. And the great news is that we have more women throughout the career fields, with the pilot being less so and fighter pilot being a little bit less so than that, but we're making progress. And so I would say work hard and bring that positive energy.
Excellent. Thank you. Captain Montcalm Smith?
So I am vastly different right now than I was when I joined the service back in 1991. As a typical scientist, I was quite introverted and really did not put myself out there. And through the years, I have learned that You need to lead, and you need to get out there, and you need to take care of people, and you need to mentor them, and you need to ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How can I help you? My advice for any women joining the military now would be to not be afraid and ask. You need to let people know what you want, what you can do. Don't be obnoxious about it. But you do have to do some self-promotion and say to people, I'm interested in this, I can do this, I can help you with this, please let me help you with this. You need to learn how to negotiate. Women do not negotiate, and we lose millions of dollars throughout our lifetime because we don't negotiate for more salary or to decrease the price of a car, etc. Women tend to think that someone will notice the great job we're doing, and they will just turn to us and say, hey, that's a great job, I want you to do such and such. You do have to self-promote, and you do have to be social, and you have to not be shy. When there are events, you have to go up and introduce yourself to the commanding general. And every time you have to remind them, yes, ma'am, I met you at such and such. It's so nice to see you again. So a perfect example is that I mentioned that my daughter would like to join the Air Force. And now I think I've found someone who's going to help her and possibly mentor her. So if I hadn't put that out there, we may not have made that connection. So thank you very much, ma'am. I would appreciate speaking with you and any help that you may offer for my daughter. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. So making connections even here, right? But very practical advice. So thank you, Captain. General Richardson, the floor is yours.
So I would say I'm probably a little bit different, not much. I would just say maybe a little bit older, and probably a little bit more confident in how I approach things and how I do things, just because of the experience. And I would say all of those values that I learned from athletics and from coming up in my formative years, I think really helped out. I would say for young people, I always tell when I talk to folks is, and for men and women, and young people just starting out, is just be the way to fit in, because I think sometimes folks try really hard to fit in, and I think more so on the women's side of the house, when you come into a new organization such as the military and your first unit, and you really try hard to be part of the team and maybe even so much as force that. It's really, I think, the way that you become part of the team as a woman is just be confident in what you're there to do. And then the fitting in will happen very, very nicely. I think trying to fit in too hard sometimes and pushing that before folks know you. I think folks get to know you from your ability to what you do and what you're there for. So that's the advice that I give generally to folks as they're coming into and new to the military.
Excellent. Thank you. Very, very practical advice from all three of you, and certainly advice that I will share with my own daughters. I have two daughters of my own, and I'm glad we're recording this so that I can show this to them, and they can hear directly from you all as opportunities to improve themselves. So thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Captain Montcalm Smith. Where do you think we have the greatest shortfall and need for women according to duty description or position?
So that's a tough question for me coming from the medical department, because I think that the women are pretty fairly represented, maybe not in medical care for the Marine Corps, but I do think that women are underrepresented in some of the combat arms and perhaps obviously in the pilot community. In medical, we have probably close to 50% of our physicians are females. Our commanding officers are well represented with the females. And so I don't see that as a problem in the medical department, but I yield my time to the other ladies who probably have a better answer. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. General Richardson?
So I would say just our combat positions that opened up in 2016. So I think that building that bench, so to speak, is really important. And the Army's put a lot of thought into how to do that. We've done that before when we put women into flying attack aircraft, helicopters, and things like that, and that was very successful. And so, you know, you want to have a group of women in a unit, not just put a woman in a combat unit, an armor or an infantry unit, and then she's the only one, right? And so putting a couple NCOs, a couple officers, and, you know, so it doesn't seem like you're the Lone Ranger there in the unit, and that has worked very well for the Army. And so building that bench. For all of the other skill sets, I would just say that we're probably very well represented across the board, and, you know, doctors, nurses, attorneys, pilots, all of those other, all of our MOSs and the skill sets in the Army, for example, I think we're pretty well represented.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. General Levitt.
Okay, so I've already mentioned the pilots, specifically fighter pilots are underrepresented for women, but it's something we're aggressively going after. And in fact, when I was at Air Force Recruiting Service, we stood up a detachment just focused on increasing rate of diversity. And one of the most important things is going out and speaking and engaging and inspiring the youth, because there's importance of seeing someone that looks like you, that makes you think, it breaks your paradigm, and you go, well, I can do that. I can do anything. And I had the great privilege to commission a second lieutenant from the United States Air Force Academy a couple months ago. And it was really special because this young lady had heard me speak a couple times when she was in high school. And she was incredible. She was valedictorian, could go to any service academy. She chose the Air Force Academy. She wants to be a pilot because she heard me speak. Not that I said anything so interesting, but it's just seeing someone and realizing that you can do that. And so I think it's really important, whether it's pilot, fighter pilot, or special warfare, which has recently opened up to women. You know, we have all career fields open now. And so there are certain career fields where we are really trying to find the right folks and get them inspired to step up and try it. They're going to be challenging, but we know that there are amazing women that could absolutely do it.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we are quickly approaching the end of our time, but we've got so many great questions. So we're going to submit these questions to you all, and hopefully when you find some time, if you wouldn't mind answering, because they're really powerful, and I think they can really help people chart their own course. But why don't I close with this one and just ask you to just touch on it really quickly. How can men be better mentors to their female subordinates? And we'll start all over again with General Richardson.
I would say probably not be intimidated as a male boss or mentor or something like that, to talk with to folks that work for you that are women. I watched my husband, actually. I was very impressed when I was lieutenant colonel. We were both battalion commanders, and I had gone over to visit his unit, and he was in the middle of talking with the females in his battalion. And he had an Apache battalion, and this was about 3 or 4 months before we deployed over to Iraq on the initial invasion. And he was talking to them about the importance of their role in the battalion, that every one of them was absolutely needed to fill the critical skill sets and things like that. And he was having a discussion with them. And as you can imagine, that discussion could range anywhere from, you know, things about life and children and all those kinds of things, to doing your skill set and the overarching picture of, you know, military strategy. So, I mean, it could cover the gamut. So I would just say, you know, be open-minded and be helpful. Sometimes I think young people, they have a pretty good I like to call it a poker face. Like they don't look like anything's wrong or they're having any issues or problems. But when actually they might be, really might be tumultuous for them to be in the workplace and going through life things that are happening that are just normal. And then you add on, other stresses like COVID or whatever, that might be taking place. And so I think just opening up and being open to that, not being intimidated by that, it really comes down to communication.
Wonderful. Thank you. Excellent advice. I know, General Levitt, you need to jump off. Do you have a minute or two just to say a word or two about this question?
Absolutely. So I agree with General Richardson. It's about listening. It's about having conversations. It's creating the environment where people feel comfortable talking to you. Last year, my command chief at recruiting, Chief Sonia Lee, she set up the first ever women's symposium from AFRS. And we had a huge turnout, women and men. And it was really interesting to get some of the feedback from the men because they said, wow, these are things I never even thought about. And my chief got up there and said it very well. She said, these are not women's issues. These are airmen issues. This is our force. So we need to understand all of our force. And so having those conversations and listening and understanding helps us be more effective as a team.
Well said. Thank you. And thanks for joining us. Captain Montcalm Smith, please.
So this is an old book, but it was one that was very popular many years ago. And the title is something like Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And so men and women have different communication styles. Sometimes if I tell my husband something, he just wants to solve the problem for me, and I don't want him to solve it. I just want to talk about it. And so I do think that being able to communicate is very important in understanding different people's communication style. As a female, you may have to stand up for yourself. I once went to my boss and was discussing someone else. It was a male, and my boss, who was a male, looked at me and said, well, you just don't like him. And I said, that has nothing to do with the price of eggs. I didn't like his response to this issue, and this is why I didn't like his response. So as a woman, you may have to push back when someone attributes a behavior or an attitude to you that really isn't you, and you may just have to push back respectfully and tell them no, that is not correct. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Very well said. Thank you. That's a great nugget and something that certainly I will hold close to my brain and my heart. I'd like to close the program by thanking you all again for joining us. What an honor it is for me to be able to host all three of you and to hear your stories and your answers to these questions. Very important, very powerful, and you all are, just treasures for this country. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity for you to join us. So thank you again, General Richardson, General Levitt, and Captain Montcalm Smith. An electronic hand clap to all of you for the good work today. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll close the program. We've got a ton of different events coming up, and please take a look at our website. I want to close, though, with something that's really starting to trouble us again, and that is this resurgence of COVID in our community. Please remember to wash your hands, maintain social distancing, use a mask. I don't like using it myself, but I do use it when I'm out in the public. It really makes sense. It's not the most fun thing to wear, but it is the safest thing to do in this time of COVID resurgence. So I'll ask you all to please stay safe. Use the stuff on your hands to sanitize your hands and just be careful. But please remember that we cannot live in fear as Americans. We just need to take precautions and be smart about what we do. And so with that, we want to, again, thank our sponsors. We want to thank all of you. Almost 300 plus people joined us. Thank you all very much. We're excited, we're honored, and we appreciate it. And with that, we will sign off. Thank you for joining us.